And we are live. Good morning, good evening. This is the first community update from Saleor. My name is Jakub Neander, and I'm happy to be joined by my colleagues, Patrick Zawadzki, CTO of Saleor, Krzysztof Wolski, Research and Development Architect, and Head of Content, Jakub Majorek.
Hello.
So what is community updates? This is our first attempt. We want to share with you what we are working on, what we want to improve, and we want to give you a voice so you can ask your questions before that, and we will try to answer them. So today we have 3 topics we would like to share, discuss, and we have some questions from the community that we gathered before this event. And then we will open the chat. So if you have any questions, please ask them on the chat, and we will try to discuss that. So without any further ado, let's maybe start. And the first thing would be to present what Saleor is. And Patrick, would you be willing to tell us a little bit about Saleor?
Yes. So yeah, with pleasure. So what is Saleor? And I would say that it's a bit hard to explain in 3 words, but if I had to say this as a single sentence, it would be it's a headless commerce platform. But I don't think that tells you much. So what Saleor does is Saleor provides an API and a data storage that allows you to build storefronts and store-like experiences without having to build the backend, while enabling you to stay in full control of your either front-end stack or your front-end technology, because while today most stores are built on the web, we already see a lot of different technologies being used, like React Native, like actual native applications built in Java or built in Swift, and completely new platforms like Unity, where you may have a 3D virtual space that is also used to trade or to buy items, share microtransactions, everything related to that. So Saleor is an API that enables all of this to happen. It provides a data store, it provides a dashboard. So it's a bunch of different things on top of the API to make it possible to transact and to run your store for your staff members. And I think today we will touch a bit on all of these.
And I wanted to ask you, because you are the mastermind, can I say that, behind Saleor, and there is this important aspect, GraphQL. Why did you decide as a team to use GraphQL? What's the power of GraphQL? Or
right, so I'm not sure if GraphQL itself is a controversial topic, but I believe GraphQL is the best way to put developers in charge of how the API works. I mean, not internally, because business logic is still defined by us, but it lets developers request only the data they need to have, and it lets us return only the data that needs to be returned, which is, of course, more optimal. But it's also a remote procedure calling API, which is very different to how REST works, which means that GraphQL mutations model actual business changes and not just data updates. So it's not just a crude API where you say create object, update object. Instead, you execute named operations, which I think is way more expressive and leads to more idiomatic use of the API.
So with GraphQL, you have this approach where you can divide certain things, like you can divide backend and the things on the backend and the front end. And I wanted to ask you, Jakub, because you're leading the team of the dashboard, how it is working with GraphQL endpoint, creating a dashboard, and maybe a word about what dashboard is and what it solves.
Sure. So for front-end developers, GraphQL is the best thing that happens to front-end in a good while because it seamlessly integrates with TypeScript, which is what we use in all our front-end projects. And it allows to maintain a contract between a schema coming from Saleor API, and we can type it properly and in turn so get rid of those bugs that happened in the past where we do a word that doesn't exist in the schema, or we do a typo and etc. So it allows us to get rid of those quite obvious bugs that TypeScript takes care for us.
Absolutely. I was blown away. I remember talking with you, Krzysztof, when we were building a storefront. We will talk about it later. But there is this project, CodeGen TypeScript. And I remember our discussion that we were blown away by the easiness that you can generate so many things out of the box from the backend, from all those notions that are in Saleor API, e-commerce notions, and then translate that to your front end and quickly build a storefront. And I was wondering your to share your excitement, because I remember you were very happy about that.
Yes, exactly. The thing that I can easily have typed requests with all the variables required for this request and fully typed responses is pretty amazing, especially if you use a language which handles types like TypeScript. The developer experience is pretty amazing. You exactly know which data will be in the response, and you know what to expect. So building the storefront is a great part.
Yeah, I agree. And I have this impression that this project, CodeGen, TypeScript CodeGen GraphQL generator, is not that well known, surprisingly. I'm not sure if that's just an impression, but it seems it's a great project that it's still not known widely. So there's still an opportunity to improve that. And maybe let's let's announce this thing we were working together, Krzysztof, because you are the mastermind behind this new project by Saleor. So we want to improve how you build storefronts, and we decided to use React, this technology, to build an open source storefront on top of Saleor API. And I wanted to ask you, Krzysztof, why we decided to use React, and what's the stack of this project?
Okay, why React? Because it's a great way to build front ends, the most part. Also, it's a really known and very popular framework. And when building this new project, we decided to use Next.js to work with, because it's built on top of React, and there's not a lot of things you'll need to learn if you are first time using Next.js. Also, it gives you great features like image optimizations, which are quite important for the storefronts, because sometimes your photographers give you giant files for the pictures, product pictures. And Next.js have features and helpers which can convert them to something smaller.
So let's maybe quickly, sorry to interrupt you, let's maybe quickly say what exactly React Storefront is.
Okay, so React Storefront is a starter pack. I see it as starter pack, which will help you to quickly create your storefront. I would like to share the screen, and I'm not sure if it's visible right now.
So this is our first live stream, so we may have some issues. Let me just quickly find I have it. So can I enable it right now? I'm doing that. Okay.
Okay, great. That's my screen. So you can find our project repository at Saleor/React Storefront. Here you will find code and instructions how to start working with this project. Besides that, we have some goodies like live code environment which you can quickly start changing it. Also, there's a live demo which is deployed on Vercel right now. So that's the beast we are talking about. So that's our homepage.
And yeah, that's. I wanted just to say that we decided to use Next.js as the core technology, and was wondering why. What do you think about Next.js? Maybe.
I'm having a great time, really, because because besides nice front-end experience, you can also leverage some server-side rendering, or even create your own backend in JS or TypeScript. And we are heavily using those server-side rendering features, for example, for product pages. As you can see, the load time is instant because most of the data is already rendered on the backend side, and we are only downloading the dynamic data which are needed to display the page. Also, it's quite a flexible feature because you can choose which data will be server-side rendered and which will be rendered on the client side. So the dynamic data like prices and availability will be not constrained with the server-side rendering and caching, because users will download the fresh data each time they visit the page. So there will be no chance of the synchronization or some strange issues with the caching.
Absolutely. I remember we were talking about the UI layer together, 4 of us, and we decided to do it like a very thin UI layer. So right now we are using Tailwind CSS, and we decided to do it in a very bare-bone way so that it's easily customizable by the users. And I was wondering, so there are a few things. The one is why we decided to do that, and I wanted to ask you about this, Patrick. And then, Jakub, you proposed this idea of extending GraphQL, and maybe we could later discuss this, what it brings to the table. So let's maybe talk first about.
Right. So why have a starter pack that is not heavily themed? I think we've discussed this for quite a bit, and ultimately my take is that there are 2 different types of projects that people can benefit from. One is an opinionated storefront that you can just install, use its configuration features to make it your own, maybe replace the logo, change the colors, and so on. And a modular store like that is what our friends at Vercel are building. This is the Next.js Commerce project where we're contributing to that project. So this is a more or less ready-to-use storefront that you can use and customize without actually forking the code base. And it fulfills that purpose. But the other thing is where you're ready to build your own store and you need something running within minutes. So you can start building without having to build everything from scratch. You can start with something and then replace components or views one at a time, while having a working store the entire time. So you can start with your product details page, for example, replace that, and then test it with the bare bones checkout process, the payment process, everything that comes out of the box. It won't be pretty, but it will be working. So it gives you a way to keep improving upon what comes as part of the project, without having to rebuild everything before you're ready to test. So that's why I think it's important to have something that is very thin. It may be opinionated, but it has to be easily replaceable. So it cannot have too many abstraction layers. It cannot have layers of configuration upon configuration upon configuration, because the goal for this is not to be a storefront. The goal is to provide a scaffolding for you to build your own views upon. So the best use you can make of the React storefront is to just take it, start with any area that you want to customize and just start building that component from scratch by maybe utilizing the data that we're already fetching there, or maybe modifying the queries to add some more data and some more fields. But the ultimate goal is for you to build on top of this by replacing parts of the React storefront, not by changing how it looks.
So we could say that we are focusing on the freedom.
Yes, exactly.
The tool allows you to be it's very flexible. And I'm not sure if I phrased it correctly, but this is especially visible if your storefronts or e-commerce solution is large, so that you need this flexibility. You need to, you have special requirements, and we try to respond to that with this open source project, React Storefront, while the other solutions are more like constrained, and they just allow you to quickly maybe create something, but then if you stumble upon something that you need to do in a custom way, then it becomes difficult or time consuming. And I wanted to focus now on this idea, Jakub, you provided about extending GraphQL schema, which is like somehow paired with what we discussed. Could you tell us a bit about that and why it's important?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting concept. I'll try to explain it in a few sentences. But the idea is that we can use our schema that is served from API, from Saleor, and extend it locally. So, for example, one use case that we found it useful is that since we have an amount and a currency displayed as two separate fields on our API, we usually want to display them in a user readable way, like a localized string with a currency and amount. So the way we can utilize local resolvers with schemas is we can basically create a new field that will always take these two, which is the currency and the amount, and format them in a way that you can use them throughout the entire storefront. So it's always there. It's as if it was part of the API, but it's done on the client side when this data comes in from Saleor. So this is like one of the features that Apollo has, but I believe there are different libraries that also utilize this concept of what's called local resolvers, which do just that.
Mm-hmm. And this is again something which really focuses on this, like a freedom and flexibility of the solution, so that you can adapt it. You have this power of adapting it to your own specific needs. So now maybe, because our agenda is packed and we are already 20 minutes in, maybe let's try to go through the things we wanted to talk about. So the first thing, maybe just to finish off with the React Storefront, is that this project is still in a very early state. And if you want to help us build it, we will be more than happy to have you. Please issue a pull request. This is the GitHub repository, Saleor/React Storefront. Right now, the repository creates a very, I would say, complete storefront. Can I say that, Krzysztof? Is it complete?
Yes, you can say that it's complete because it's for you can browse the products, you can manage your customer account. So the boring parts are already here, and you can make orders. There are, right now there are example payment gateways, but we are working on implementing the more complicated ones like Stripe with 3D Secure or Adyen. But the core is here, and you can start working on it. And if you have any ideas which would help you create your storefront, please create discussion or issue on GitHub.
So there are a few things that we want to add. I remember you had a few ideas that we want to still expand, and I was wondering, for example, one of them is to add the search. So we were working recently with the integrating with search engines such as Algolia, and specifically we focused on TypeSense. and we will be soon adding that, so you could see how you could use those search solutions and with Saleor, and how to integrate that in a Next.js, React.js application. But there are a few other things we wanted to add. So one of them was about channels, and I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about that, Christoph.
As we speak, we implement support for multi-channel and the storefront. It will allow you to create separate regions. For example, you can sell products in the USA and in the Europe, and each region will have different currencies or can have different product availability. So it will land on the storefront. Besides that, after it, we'll be working on implementing translations, because API at the moment support the translations, and we would like to use them also on the front-end part. Also, there will be some developer experience things like existing scripts to easily integrate with the translations provider like Transifex, for example.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's worth also saying that we want to be very modern. So all elements in the stack, in this project, React Storefront, we decided to use a very modern approaches. So for example, we have this code generation out of the box. We are using Apollo client and all the new and shiny stuff. At the same time, we want to focus on production grade solutions. So it's very important that we use something that we would recommend to our clients. So it's like production grade, and it's very firm, very solution that's should be used in a production setting.
And things which we would like to use ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
And at the same time, sorry to interrupt, but at the same time, when we are adding new features, we are invalidating them, how easy it will be then to change, for example. So the experience working with this repository should be very flexible. So you shouldn't be chained into some decisions we've made. But if you try to change some of the packages we use, it should be very easy to fork and change them, replace them.
I absolutely agree. Just wanted to add something on the side that this is our first live stream, and we are all a bit stressed, so maybe apologize for that. We are trying to do our best. I hope the next one will be better. But so the next last thing maybe that it's worth mentioning is that we also want to teach people how to create amazing storefronts. And we created this tutorial, which is a very comprehensive introduction to React, Next.js, and to building storefronts using those technologies on top of Saleor's GraphQL API. So even if you're not interested in e-commerce, I think if you want to see how to create a modern production-grade application using Next.js and React.js, it's worth checking out. So if you go to learn.saleor.io, you will see this tutorial. And again, this is a first version. And because this is a huge topic, building a storefront, it's not an easy task. So there's a few things missing, but we continue working on this, and we will be adding more and more content to that. But I would like you to, if you're interested in any of those topics, please check it out and help us improve it. So let's maybe switch gears. And we got this question from the community about the Saleor versioning. And there is the plan, what we recommend, there is old version 2.11, the new version, which should be now used 3.0, and the upcoming version 3.1. And I wanted to ask you, Patrick, what's the plan for those versions? And even if 3.0 is still in beta, we recommend to use it, right?
Yeah, so yeah, we get this question a lot. There is some confusion, and I mean, we're partially guilty of the confusion, because 2.11 is still marked as the latest stable release, and 3.0 is in beta stage, but it is the release that we recommend that people actually use instead of 2.11. So 2.11 is stable as far as existing services and deployments are concerned. So we don't want to rush people to switch to 3.0 until we complete our backlog of things that we want to fix, including a proper migration documentation. So there is a lot of things that have changed since the 2.x series, and 3.0 breaks some of the APIs. So one of the reasons it's not marked as stable yet is because we do need to complete a document that tells you how to get from where you are on 2.11 to where you want to be with 3.0. But for new storefronts, we do recommend people start with the beta release of 3.0. And what may be confusing as well is that we're in parallel to 3.0, we're also working on 3.1, which may be counterintuitive, but it's crucial to understand that we need to limit the scope of each and every release. So the only way we can actually release a 3.0 version and call it done and provide a way to upgrade is we need to say, okay, this is out of scope. We need to push this to the next version. But while we have the resources to build some of those features, we want to do it in parallel. So there is the main branch in the repository, or all of the repositories. The main branch is going to be the 3.1 release that's going to be starting to stabilize somewhere early next year. And you can also find the 3.0 branch in all of those repositories. And this is what we're in the process of stabilizing right now. And I don't want to promise a date because I think that the only way to release software in a responsible way is to release it when it's done. So I don't want to promise a date, but it's getting there. There are some exciting changes that we're still implementing, including the dashboard experience, because while the feature parity is there, we call it a beta because we're happy with what it can do right now, but we're still not quite happy with how it does it. We value the dashboard experience, so we're still polishing that. Kuba can speak about the dashboard later on, but yeah, so that's where we are currently. The 3.0 is getting there, and it will be released shortly, but I don't want to put a date on this. And 3.1 is what we're working on in parallel, and it will become the next release.
I think it's also worth mentioning that we are doing our best, and sometimes it's not easy to communicate that. So with those community updates, we want to change that. So if you feel that something is missing and you have specific questions, starting from today, we will do those updates on monthly basis, and we want to give a chance to people to say what they think and help us improve those things. So maybe let's talk about dashboard now.
Yeah, but if I may, I wanted to add one more thing. So the 3.0 release is crucial because it's a major version update, which means it gets to break some of the APIs. But it's also a milestone that unlocks us to the ability to release much smaller incremental updates like 3.1, 3.2, and so on. And we imagine those would take way shorter between their releases. So we want to limit their scopes to a couple interesting features instead of time gating them and say, whatever makes it into Saleor in the next 6 months or something like that. So ideally, we would be releasing those every couple of weeks or maybe couple of months. But we don't want to take any more major leaps where we introduce, say, a dozen new features over the course of a year and then do a breaking release containing all of that.
So before we move forward, we have a few questions on the chat, and we will answer them at the end. So please bear with us. So let's maybe talk about dashboard now. What are the plans? And there is what's the situation with the older version and the new version? The question that's being asked often on GitHub issues and discussions. Could you give us some light on this, Jakub?
Sure. I can talk about dashboard endlessly, so I think you'll have to stop me at some point.
I will stop you.
But okay, so let's start with why do we need a dashboard? Like Patrick mentioned at the beginning, Saleor is fully headless, which means you can build custom experiences for web, for mobile, probably for fridges, and some fully custom integrations, and etc. But writing a dashboard that covers the most common use cases, like viewing orders, creating products, this is not something that every developer wants to do when they bootstrap their new storefront, which is why even though Saleor is fully headless and this is our main product, we also ship it with dashboard, which covers most of the use cases. And we basically, like Patrick mentioned, try to maintain feature parity, which means that we constantly have to be up to date with Saleor new features, which there are a ton of, by the way. So we constantly do that over the time. And yeah, but also the user experience, this is one area that we are constantly trying to improve on because commerce is not an easy, commerce flows are not easy. So to create a user experience that is easy to use for the user, but also does very complex things underneath is one of the challenges that we've had. And which is why we've been working very heavily for the new design, new user experience for our dashboard, which is yet to be implemented. But I'm happy to say that we started working on the implementation recently. And this is a big thing for us because it will not only refresh the look and feel, the colors and etc. of the dashboard, but it will also allow us to do gradual improvements over time to make the user experience even better and rework some of the forms and stuff like that. So yeah, that's like one of the main things we are focusing on right now. But yeah, dashboard is not the only front-end project we work at here at Saleor. So I would also like to talk a little bit more about one tool and library in particular, which allowed us to basically redesign our dashboard, which is Macau UI. So what is Macau UI? Let me share my screen and zoom in a little bit. Okay, so Macau UI is a UI component library that is based heavily on Material UI, but it's also extended. The theme is extended so that it fits our brands, and we have some overrides and custom components. It's made for React, and it made the redesign possible in a way because it allowed us to make small iterations over time. So we were constantly creating a component in Macau, moving it back to our dashboards and slowly iterating and moving more of the code base towards this kit rather than keeping it in the code itself. Mm-hmm. And it also allowed us to ship code with less bugs and more consistent across our projects, because Dashboard is not the only project that is using Macau. It's also our cloud dashboard, which also uses the same component library. So it was crucial for us to not duplicate the code, but also maintain the same UI, so our users have a familiar feeling when they're going back from dashboards to from dashboard core dashboard to cloud dashboard. And so apart from shipping less bugs and components that look identical, it will also have a much larger impact in future and even right now, which is it will allow you to easily create Saleor apps that have the same look and feel as our dashboard, so that the users have a familiar feeling when they're going through the dashboard. But it's not just for the users of the dashboard, but it's primarily also for the developers. So it will allow the developers to bootstrap and create apps very easily, because you no longer have to think about creating a button from scratch, a checkbox. So it's all provided within the repository, the project itself. So like I mentioned, it's based on Material UI. So basically every component you can think of in Material UI is already styled, so it looks like it's coming from our design. But there are also a few custom ones. So the cool thing is that we have a storybook you can access here, and it gives you a sneak peek of those custom components and how you can use them. So here you can see we have some inputs, and there are many different types of inputs. These are the ones that we especially overridden. Like there are small details you can see if I zoom in. Like if I hover here, it's those very small details that I think the users will be able to tell, and it's not very obvious, but it makes for a better user experience. And there's a bunch of those components that you are free to take a look at and use today in your apps. So here you can see some of them in action.
So you could say that this library helps us to be faster and to develop the foundation to move fast with development and to have this coherent experience for our users across the board.
Yes, exactly. So like you mentioned, and super easy to use. And just to mention, we are only getting started with this. Right now we have 20 custom components. We will have much more within the next few months, and our goal is to move all of those components that are the bare bones of our dashboards into Macau, so that everything you can see in dashboard can be replicated using a Macau UI. So that's the one cool thing, and yeah, there's much more coming up in that space.
Right, but that's not the only way to integrate with the dashboard, right? Because there's more to that, and it would be nice if you could also introduce the app bridge as a concept.
Yeah. So what is app bridge? So app bridge started as because we wanted to our dashboard to integrate some existing apps in the same UI. So to do that and do it securely, we need to do it as iframes. And because iframe secure communication between those is not a very easy to use concept, because you need to use post message APIs. What we did is we created something called app bridge, which allows you to, it basically exposes like a higher set of APIs that integrate with the dashboard seamlessly. So the cool thing about it is that it handles authentication for you. So if you go to the repository,
we have it on the screen, Saleor/app-bridge.
Okay, let me pull it up real quick. So the cool thing about it is it's very easy to use. Right now, it's a super simple project that will the API will evolve in with time. Right now, it's mostly made for authentication and for doing basic actions like redirects in dashboard. Because we don't expose it needs to be fully secure. So we don't expose the window object. You cannot do the same things you would do in console inside the app itself. It needs to be federated with an app bridge. So this is why we expose only like a select few of those, and this will come in the future. There will be more of those APIs, and we'll be able to do much more than just redirects. But I encourage you to check it out and see first how it looks like. Right now it's super simple to use, only a few methods, but yeah, much more to come on that front later.
But it may not be intuitive why it's useful and why we need to solve authentication, for example. Because while applications do have their server-side credentials that they can use to talk to Saleor's API, we want to enable application UIs to be able to also execute actions on behalf of the user controlling the application rather than the application itself. So when you visit an application view, what Saleor does is it generates a new authentication token, which is the common subset of app permissions and user permissions. So only the parts that overlap are assigned to that token, and you can do operations using this token that will be shown as being executed by the user. But it doesn't give the application the full power of the user account. So super user who has all of the possible permissions using the application's UI wouldn't be able to utilize all of those permissions, and this is important for security. So the application can only do what it was allowed to do.
And if we talk about the e-commerce context, could we have an example when this is useful, for example?
Say you would like to build an application that shows abandoned checkout sessions, like the one we've discussed in one of our video streams. So you would only give it access to actual checkout objects. You don't want the application to be able to invite new staff users, for example, or to assign permissions. So while the application itself, as its backend service, may be able to utilize the credentials that were assigned to the application to do that, it's also useful for the admin visiting the application page to be able to do those things without talking to the application's backend service. So in other words, just allowing the JavaScript running in your browser to talk to Saleor directly without proxying all of the calls through your actual backend. So for this purpose, we generate a new token that is valid for this particular user and only for the subset of permissions that overlap with the application's permissions. So even if you were assigned as a person all possible permissions, the token still can only do checkout management because that's what the application was allowed to do.
Gotcha.
So it's a way to limit the potential scope of abuse and to establish a level of trust between users and applications.
Absolutely. So let's maybe talk now about, so before this live, we asked the community on our on social media for the questions, and we have a few questions, and I will try to summarize some of them. And the first one was about the project structure, that it's not entirely clear how all the elements fit together. And we decided before we started the stream that we will improve that part. So I'm not sure if there is a lot to discuss here. We acknowledge that it may be not entirely clear, but we will, from now, we will work on improving this part. One person suggested adding diagrams that explain our architecture. What do you think about that?
Yeah, maybe I can take this one, because we do clearly need to write more documentation on this, and maybe even run a separate stream where we go over the architecture itself. But if you need a short summary of how Saleor works, there is a Python core, which is the Saleor repository, which you're supposed to run somewhere on a server, preferably in a Docker container. There is this Saleor Dashboard, which is the management interface, what staff users use to run the store. So anything from creating products to managing orders to fulfillment is happening through Dashboard. But the Dashboard is a purely front-end application. It's a PWA that's running in the browser, so you can host it anywhere. You can use Amazon S3 to host it, or you can put it on any server capable of serving HTML files, and it will run fine. And then there's the storefront, which is really up to you. We provide some examples of storefronts. There's the old Saleor storefront repository that is not very useful. It's what's being served as the demo currently, but we are looking to replace that with the React storefront project. And the React storefront that we've talked about today, which is a bare bones wireframe that can act as a starting point for your future storefront. And it will eventually become the new demo. There's also the Next.js commerce project, which is a completely external entity, but it does have a Saleor backend, and it can be used as a storefront, serving Saleor products and so on. So yeah, but the key parts are the core, which is a Python project from the Saleor repository, and Saleor Dashboard, which is the dashboard application. I've also seen a question about versioning, and we try to keep those in sync. So you're meant to run the dashboard 3.0 versus against the core version 3.0, and the React storefront using the same version should be compatible with the core. But again, this is using semantic versioning, so hopefully anything built against 3.0 will also run against 3.1, 3.2, and so on. So
with the exception,
sorry
to interrupt you. Just wanted to say that with the exception of React Storefront, which is kind of different because it's generated from the API. So I mean, we will take on us somehow the breaking changes. We could,
but there shouldn't be any breaking changes. The way we version our schema, so the API that is consumed by storefronts, is we use deprecations to mark things that you're no longer supposed to be using, and the deprecations mean we discourage you from using that, but the resolvers, fields, and everything will remain in place until the next major bump, which would be Saleor 4.0. So anything that is marked as deprecated in 3.0 will remain in place for 3.1, 3.2, and so on. We don't recommend using those fields because it's not future-proof, but there is no way to tell whether any field would become deprecated in future. So whatever fields you're using, if they work for you today, they will work for any other minor releases from the same version line. So for 3.0, it will be 3.1, 3.2, and so on.
So just to clarify, breaking changes are possible between 2.11 and 3.0, right?
Yeah, because the version, the major version changes, which conveys that there is a breaking change in the API.
Absolutely, yeah. Just going back to this question about the diagrams and this whole structure, I had this idea before the stream that maybe we should do this like right now there is this trend doing those isometric diagrams. Maybe we should do something like that on our page where we have this like isometric, like Amazon is doing with the services, how it's all connected.
Yeah, like the network graph, right?
Something of that sort, so that it explains all the pieces. And because I mean it's I think that it's the power of Saleor that it's flexible and there are many pieces you need to know and integrate, so that maybe that
right. But it's also important to understand that since this is a headless service, it's meant to be part of a composable architecture, which means there may be way more services running in parallel to Saleor that Saleor may not even know about, and that your storefront may be consuming in addition to what Saleor is offering. Maybe you have a separate CMS service that you used to build your about page, your legal terms of use, and so on, and Saleor may not even know about its existence. So your actual network graph could have dozens of nodes that are not interconnected like they would be in a typical monolithic architecture where a single point just acts as a proxy to different services. So it's actually hard to show you how to benefit from the architecture until you start using it and you start adding those services, and you see that it either takes a small piece of glue code to have two services talking to each other because they're all headless, they're all exposing APIs, or you don't need any code at all because they don't need to know about each other's existence.
Yeah.
So the only thing you do is you consume their APIs from your storefront code. So I would say the architecture between Saleor and the dashboard is easy to explain, but the possibilities are endless of how you could actually structure your entire stack.
So this is funny because this is what attracted me to Saleor at the beginning. Now I'm part of the team, but I remember at the beginning I was impressed. So now it's kind of biased opinion, but I was impressed by this, as you say, being easy, this connectability and integrating those different things so easily, even with my limited knowledge of e-commerce. That's a nice thing. So we are almost an hour, so let's try to wrap certain things. So there is another question that asked about the plugin extensibility being present. And the question is, what is the easiest path to getting a configuration compatible with receiving Saleor updates? And I think you, Patrick, you responded partly about that.
Yeah, so this question eventually became a thread on Twitter with many responses from me. But in essence, we think it's important to be running Saleor unmodified, because that's the only way for you to receive and benefit from all of the updates that the team is working on. So we know that there was a point in Saleor's history where it was just more intuitive to fork the code and apply the changes directly, like maybe implement a bit of custom business logic here and there, maybe change how the order flow works. But we think the right way to do this is to use the applications API, which is to rely on events generated by Saleor and to use Saleor's GraphQL API to update the database rather than modifying the code. So if you have a code base that's running a modified Saleor version, maybe 2.9, 2.10, 2.11, I would encourage you to try to rebuild those custom bits as applications running on top of 3.0, and then look into updating to the 3.0 version. As I've said, we're still working on a migration guide that shows you what's changed between 2.11 and 3.0, other than the fields that were marked for deprecation. But running on top of the official build paves your way to quick security updates, to generally unlocks maintainability. That's something that we provide as a company. And you can benefit from us issuing a new version that fixes a bug, that fixes something that may be important for you, or a feature, or implements a feature that you may want to be able to use. But with a fork, you're responsible for managing all of this work, and it becomes harder and harder as the two projects diverge from each other. So in short, I recommend to rebuild the small bits rather than trying to reapply the changes on a newer and newer version of Saleor.
That makes sense. There's a last question about SDK. I think we haven't talked about SDK. Maybe we could quickly tell a little bit about what is Saleor SDK. And there is the question, is the new SDK compatible with React Native? Can we use it with React Native?
Okay, so to quickly answer before I dive into the new SDK is that we architected it in a way that it doesn't assume there is a window object, so it will be easy to use in React Native and in server scenarios. However, it's not compatible with React Native right now, but there is a plan to do that for sure. and it doesn't mean that we will have to change the base. It's made so that it will be easy to work on it. And to explain what the new SDK is, because maybe some of you have already used the old SDK in the past. So this year we rebuilt it from scratch. And the old one did the job for the most simple use cases, for most simple storefronts. However, we quickly found out that if there are more complex solutions, then it would not be the most ideal solution. So in the past, it was a very thin wrapper around our GraphQL API, which meant there are a few downsides to that. So basically, we always need to play catch up to our API because it's always coming out faster, and we need to replicate that feature and move it to SDK. It also meant that we need to maintain a second documentation, and we would rather focus on having one great documentation instead. And it meant that it turned our GraphQL into REST, because there were some queries that had already predefined fields, and it was not very straightforward to extend the functionality. So we took a few steps back, and we decided that our SDK should be more lightweight, and we should utilize more of the GraphQL tooling to take care of the SDK part. So GraphQL and its tooling is so broad right now that you can use great tooling like the CodeGen you mentioned in the beginning, and auto-generated queries and etc. So basically what we provided you with SDK, you can get with automated code generation. So instead, what we thought, what are the most common use cases? What is the code that gets duplicated across almost every storefront? So with that mindset, we decided that we would first start with authentication. This is a big part because authentication is usually duplicated across the projects, but it needs to be robust and bulletproof and tested.
Absolutely.
So, and apart from that, our new SDK also supports the short session plus refresh token flow, which is the most secure authentication flow with cookies, cross-site forgery, tokens, and automatic token rotations. And it also means that we do not store the tokens anywhere on the client side. So it's impossible to steal it for a malicious actor from outside. So this was our main goal. And now we are working on bringing some utilities to the SDK. So things like helpers for pagination, helpers for unpacking certain objects from our API, things that you can bring in and you can easily work with them. So this is the next steps for the SDK. But right now we recommended using it for authentication, and right now we are integrating the SDK into the dashboard as we are speaking.
So we are using this SDK and the React storefront. And if you'd like to see like a usage, how to use that in a real project, like to have a preview, please check it out as well. So it's a good opportunity.
Yeah, and sorry, one thing to mention is that it's fully written in TypeScript and it's completely framework agnostic. So while we do provide you with React hooks, so it's even easier to integrate into React applications, it will work on any JavaScript stack you can think of. So yeah, feel free to use it, and it will work with almost any GraphQL client there is. The authentication is very plug and play. We export a fetch, a wrapper fetch that will automatically inject the tokens. It will do auto refreshing. It will do auto retries. It's all tested on our site, so we encourage you to try it out.
Awesome. So we are almost a little bit over time, but there's few people, a lot of people watching us. So if you have any questions, now is the time to ask those questions. And maybe let's try to answer some of the questions in the chat. So the first one is from Martin. Do you have information on invalidating static pages? You mentioned it, I think, Patrick, during your talk.
Yeah, I did talk about becoming more real-time, where we would ideally cache everything statically and then use hooks to invalidate the cache as the data changes. But I don't think there is a ready-to-use solution yet. We hope that the new edge functions that the latest release of Next brought will make this easier, but we don't have a ready solution yet for people to use. So stay tuned, I would say.
And is it possible to somehow solve this partially using incremental static regeneration in Next.js, for example?
I think it could be, but you would have to use something like dynamic keys to change how the data is cached. So I don't think there is an ideal solution how we would like this to work. I don't have any proof of concept to share at this time. So as I said, stay tuned. We're interested in this. We think this is the future of commerce. This is how the quote unquote Jamstack is supposed to be running. Like everything that could be static should be static, and we do want people to enjoy the benefits of caching.
So we will put this on our radar. And Martin, if you're still with us, we will try to provide some answers, and then next month in our December update, we will research that and see what we can do here. Okay, another question. I'm not sure if this is really a question, but let's try. Apps integration, app marketplace. Updates concerning those topics are most interesting to us. Can we address that?
I can speak about what our plans are. So apps is something that we think will become the only way to extend Saleor. Like plugins are there, but they're mostly a temporary solution, I would say. We don't want to mix custom code with the core. We don't want to have all of the cascading failure problems that come with sharing code that could possibly result in exceptions and so on. So we want the separation between Saleor and the services running as satellites around the Saleor. So I would say apps are our main way to build on top of Saleor, and we want to make apps more powerful. We want to let apps contribute more to the dashboard, something that Kuba talked about. We want apps to be able to seamlessly integrate with the dashboard. We're looking for ways to make it easier to build and run applications on common infrastructure, to lower the entry barrier for new developers to enjoy those. So we're working on starter kits for app developers, for example. So that's one part of the equation. The other part is the marketplace, which is a way to discover and obtain applications, including maybe purchasing licenses for some paid integrations. This is something that we're currently building. This is still in progress. We will share more details when we're ready to announce it, including the model, the business model that it will operate under. But this is also coming. We see the problem of it being quite hard to find applications that were already built, both by the community and by commercial entities.
Absolutely. So you mentioned an interesting thing, and I think we forgot about that. So the marketplace, will there be a marketplace? And
as I've said, we're working on building a marketplace. first as a way to discover applications that are ready to install today. So again, I don't want to put any promises, related to dates, but it's something that we're currently working on, and we're very excited to launch the first version of the marketplace. I'm hoping early next year.
And the other thing you mentioned is those templates for applications. And at the beginning with Christoph, we wanted to share our template, and maybe I will quickly share now how easy it is to create storefronts with our toolchain. And the idea is that in the future, we want to extend that and not only cover creating front ends, but also Saleor apps. So we want to provide tools so you can create those things easier. And so let me quickly maybe share my screen, because I think this is something which is very cool. You have this Yarn create next storefront tool we created. And if you run it, it will create from scratch. Something is, it's called Storefront, and you can provide a name.
The joys of live coding.
Maybe my shop. And it will set up everything you need for your storefront. So it will take a while, but my point is that we are working on those templates, and we want to make them for everything that's connected with Saleor. So yeah, please check it out. And this is also something we cover in the tutorial, that the steps that are required to build your storefront can be also generated partially using the tooling we provide with this command.
Yeah, and we want users to be able to enjoy all of the benefits of TypeScript that Kuba talked about earlier. So currently you can easily build something that listens to webhooks that come from Saleor, for example, and just consume the JSON payload that comes with them. We would like to provide something that's fully typed, so that you get the benefit of autocomplete, type checking, everything related to that. And we're also looking for a way, or actually we're building a way because we know how to do it, to be able to write webhooks that also execute GraphQL queries. So you control what data you're going to get in response to an event happening in Saleor, rather than us deciding what the shape of the payload is. And this is also something that we've been asked about previously. Like, can you add this particular field, because it's very useful for me, so I don't have to maybe make another call to Saleor's API in response to receiving an event. And so we want to unblock this by making webhook themselves GraphQL powered. So you can write a query that you want to subscribe to, and you will get that exact shape of data in response. And by connecting this to CodeGen and TypeScript, you can also get all of the benefits that you get from regular, code written in TypeScript. So full type control, autocomplete inside your editor, and so on. This is why we're excited to provide all of the starter kits, because they make you productive from the very first minute.
And I would also add to that I think those starter kits will evolve, so it will be even easier with time to create a production-grade storefront. So here, I just run it, and it works out of the box. It fetches the products, and you have like a good fundamentals that you can extend on, and you can create your own storefront easily. So you don't have to do all those configurations and stuff. Everything is already set up, and we want to take it further. Yeah, just a quick live coding demo. So there is another question. about our development, and it's maybe for some people hard to follow, and I totally understand that.
Yeah, it is hard to follow. We're aware of the problem. We're discussing this every couple of weeks, how we can improve the process. Basically, the problem is that GitHub is not a very good project management tool. So we're forced to internally organize using all the tools. For Saleor, we chose ClickUp, so the team is working on ClickUp, but ClickUp is a hosted tool that is not public. So the problem that people see is that it's hard to see what we're working on currently, and sometimes why we're doing things, because we're trying to avoid this, but there are pull requests that still only refer to a ticket number in an external system that you can not see as an external person. So we want to give you more visibility into, when, why, and how of building Saleor. But we're still looking for a way to do it better. If you have any suggestions, we're open to those. For us, it's critical for the team to be productive. So I would say it's an unfortunate compromise, but it makes us able to build Saleor. What I can promise is that I'm trying to make sure that all the pull requests and tickets contain a bit more context. I mean, more than just saying it solves tickets number, 504 and 607 from the service you cannot even access. So yeah, we're aware of the problems. We know that some of the community members would love to be more involved or to be able to comment on what we're working on before it becomes part of the core. And yeah, we're looking for ways to address that.
I could also add to that those community updates are also meant to have this closer feedback loop with the community, so that maybe at some point we will also, if you would like to join us on this live stream next time and ask the question and being with us here recorded, feel free, and we will try to discuss different things. So we are working on it, and we are doing our best. So this is just a matter of time to improve that.
Definitely.
And I think we made a tour, so all the questions are being answered. So I think it's a good moment to maybe finish that. So this was our first community update for November. We plan another one still for December. If you have questions, let us know. We will, I think GitHub discussions is the best place, or Twitter, to ask those questions. We will try to address that. There's also tutorial. We are working on the tutorial to help you build storefronts in React and Next.js. And we also need help with that. So there is this repository, Saleor/Saleor.io learn, which contains the content. And if you find something like a typo or mistake or something is not clear, let us know, make an issue or issue a pull request, and we will happily integrate that. And I think that was pretty nice. I was a bit stressed, but I think it went all good. Let's maybe stop here. Thanks for watching, and see you in the December update. See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
See you.
Bye.